Right, it's going to be a quick demonstration on RootMotion. So this is our character with the bones and joints oriented to match the Mixamo orientation, which is world. You can see I've straightened out the fingers as well to match it a bit better. Now it's going to look a little bit weird. So when you do model, try and keep the fingers as straight as possible. In the A pose, obviously, not too curved. It can be a little bit curved, because it's always easier to model it like that. But straighter is better, especially lengthwise, because I've got a little bit of weirdness here, but that's okay, that's fine. So currently this character has no animation. The skeleton has no animation on it. So what I'm going to do, I'm quickly going to just jump over to a new scene here and just do a quick import of a Mixamo animation, the skinning test. Just going to play this so you can see what it looks like. Right, it's got RootMotion in it, so meaning the hips actually translate. You can see the values change in the channel box here, up here. So what I'm going to, the way you can import animations with RootMotion, and you have to, especially for once-off animations or animation montages for combat and things like that. So, but typically the RootMotion would be handled by the game, like for all the looping, the cycles, walking, running, etc., locomotion. But let's see, how can we do this? So the first thing I would do is make sure you select the whole skeleton. Your time slider is at 0. You don't have to zero out all the values, but I just do it anyway. I'm going to go to Atom, Export Animation. The first thing I'm going to do is select just the rotation and make sure that I export only what I've selected and channels from channel box. I'm going to export this to translation test. And I'm using start and end values here, 0 to 68. Let's export that. Then the next one I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the hips, in other words the root, and I'm going to export that separately. And now I'm only going to select translation, and I'm exporting this to a different file called trans-test root, all the same values there, right? And if we just quickly take a look at that file, what it looks like. This is the one that contains all the rotations, so there should be no translation values in this file. And in the root one, there's only one bone in here, and it only contains translation values and no rotation. Okay, so let's jump back over to the other scene. I think it was this one. Yeah. Just gonna hide, don't have to. Just want to make sure my base animation layer is unlocked. Make sure my skeleton is completely zeroed out. So it's in the bind pose, same pose we had just now. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import. So obviously my orientation matches the orientation of that other skeleton and the name. First I'm going to do is I'm going to set the import method to selected. Match method is going to be string, not hierarchy. Very important. And then I'm just going to use the range from the file, and I'm going to click apply. You don't have to choose anything from the channel box. And if we play this quickly, there's some issues in the head which I'll fix just now. And I've got, it's going to change my range here to 68. Just hide the skeleton for a second. Obviously the head's broken, I'll fix that now. It's very broken. I didn't skin the head, I'm only skinning the neck. That's not a hard and fast rule, that's just what I did for this character. I mean, the head doesn't really, your head doesn't move, don't move, it's your neck. well, whatever. Okay, so here's the animation, but now you'll see there's no root motion, but the character is floating in air. So to bring in the root motion is really easy. You just select the root, go to Atom, Import. Make sure you do not tick Replace. And let's change it to root. So trans test root. Everything else stays the same. Import method selected, match on string. And time range from file, do not tick replace. And let's see. So currently there's no translation keys there for the root. Hit apply, and something happened. Also, there's no translation keys for any other bones other than the root, which is what you want. Otherwise, you're going to break your skeleton, because your translation values won't match theirs. You could obviously write a script to offset them, but I mean, you don't want translation keys on FK. On it just, you don't want that. So let's play the animation now and see what happens. I'm going to just keep the skeleton visible, and you can see now the character is moving more naturally. So this would be very useful for things like melee, anything where you want the animation to control the root motion, meaning the translation of the root joint. And typically we'll use this in animation montages in Unreal Engine. All our cycling animations will not contain any root motion. That will all be handled in the game. Let's hide the skeleton here and just take a look. Previously I had some issues with my fingers, but it's been fixed now on the right hand side, and that's because I didn't choose string as match. That's why our skeletons have to match, name by name, to the Mixamo skeleton. This might change in future, but for now this is how it's going to be. And there we go. So because they were using IK to plant the feet, that's why everything works. So what's actually happening is the whole mesh is actually moving down, because if you do any translation, come on, stop. If you do any translation on the hips, everything will come along for the ride. That's what you want. So as the hips are pushing down, or moving the whole mesh down, the feet are actually staying in place, because they obviously did this with either motion capture or IK. No, it's probably motion capture. So it looks like, it looks right. Sure, the skinning could use some work. You can see there's some issues here where it's tearing in this very extreme pose here. Not the best skinning ever. And the fingers are breaking a little bit. I want to find that. There we go. So it's tearing there. That's not great. Just hide the shirt here for a second. You see the mesh is totally broken there. So, and also the finger skinning isn't great either, but that's more got to do with the way it was modeled. It wasn't modeled that great. Could have been done better to make it look a bit more normal or correct. But this is the also a pretty extreme pose here. Well, not that extreme, but this here looks alright to me. The legs. There's some weirdness happening here. No, the bread. It's like it's sinking in. You see them stretching. Yeah, that's pretty rough. A lot of black there. Wasn't skin great there. Also could have maybe used a bit more geometry. But for a game I think that's okay. Considering it would typically be playing at about this speed. It would be really fast. The clothes tearing would be fixed by scaling the clothes up a little bit so they're not so close, or moving them out by the normal. But yeah, the hands would definitely need some work. So yeah, that's how you do that, to bring in animation that contains root motion. Cool.